Sometimes the person who leaves you with nothing is the reason you finally discover what no one can take from you. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below, and if you believe dignity is the strongest revenge, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to her story. The divorce conference room was too beautiful for something so cruel. Rain traced thin silver lines down the window's 40 floors above Manhattan, while the polished walnut table reflected 3 untouched glasses of water beneath soft recessed lights. Maya Bennett sat perfectly still. At 25, the young black American woman looked almost too composed for someone watching her marriage disappear one signature at a time. Across from her sat Daniel Whitmore. 30 years old. White. Handsome in the effortless way money made easier. His charcoal suit was tailored perfectly, his silver watch catching the light whenever he turned another page. 5 years of marriage had been reduced to paper. The apartment would remain his. The investments were protected. The company shares carried his name. Even the black Mercedes Maya had driven for 3 years had technically been purchased through one of Daniel's businesses. His attorney quietly pushed the final agreement across the table. Beside Maya's chair sat a cardboard box. Inside were the things apparently considered hers. 2 framed photographs. A coffee mug. Several books. An old scarf. And a black leather notebook with worn corners. Daniel glanced at the box, then at Maya. "You've read everything?" Maya lifted her eyes. "Yes." No accusation. No pleading. That seemed to bother him more than tears would have. Daniel leaned back and exhaled slowly. "You'll be fine." Maya said nothing. Perhaps silence made him uncomfortable, because he continued. "You never cared about any of this anyway. The company. The money. That world was never really you." Her fingers rested beside the signature line. For one brief second, she remembered nights when that same hand had corrected Daniel's investor presentations at 2 in the morning. Calls she had made when he was too angry to save a client. Ideas she had whispered across their kitchen table that somehow became his ideas inside boardrooms. None of it appeared in the settlement. None of it carried her name. Daniel looked toward the papers. Then he said it. "You came into this marriage with nothing, Maya." A pause. "You can leave the same way." The words landed quietly. That was what made them cruel. His attorney lowered his eyes. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the glass. Maya looked at the man she had once believed would grow beside her. For the first time, she saw something different. Not the man she was losing. The man she had spent years making excuses for. She picked up the pen. Daniel watched her sign. 1 page. Then another. Then the last. No trembling hand. No final argument. Maya placed the pen beside the contract and stood. Daniel's expression softened with something that almost resembled pity. "Where will you go?" Maya lifted the cardboard box. "I'll figure it out." She reached the door, then stopped. Not because she wanted him back. She had remembered something. Maya set the box down, reached inside, and pulled out the worn black notebook. Daniel barely looked at it. To him, it was worthless. To Maya, it contained years of observations, business models, client problems, unfinished strategies, and ideas she had stopped pursuing because there had always been something more urgent to build for Daniel. She tucked it beneath her arm. Then walked out. The elevator doors closed between them without another word. Daniel believed he had kept everything valuable. Maya believed him too. For a little while. The cruelest part wasn't that Daniel had forgotten what Maya sacrificed for him. It was that, somewhere along the way, he had convinced her to forget too. 3 nights after the divorce, Maya sat cross-legged on the floor of a studio apartment in Queens, surrounded by half-open boxes. There was no dining table. Only a folding desk beside the window, a mattress against the wall, and the distant rumble of trains moving through the wet city. She unpacked slowly. A white coffee mug came first. Maya froze. For a moment, the apartment disappeared. She was 22 again, standing barefoot in their old kitchen at 1:47 in the morning while Daniel paced behind her. The investors hate the proposal. His voice had been sharp with panic. Maya had taken the laptop from him. Then stop telling them what the company does. Daniel frowned. Tell them what problem it solves. She rewrote the opening page before sunrise. 3 days later, Daniel came home smiling, lifted her off the floor, and said they had secured the investment. Years later, in interviews, he would call that presentation the moment he learned how to sell a vision. Maya placed the mug on the windowsill. Another box. Her old navy blazer. Another memory. She had worn it to an interview for a consulting firm she desperately wanted to join. 10 minutes before leaving, Daniel called. A major client was threatening to walk away. I need you here. Maya looked at herself in the mirror. Then at the time. She cancelled the interview. That afternoon, she sat beside Daniel for 4 hours, reorganizing a failing account until the client agreed to stay. Daniel kissed her forehead afterward. When things calm down, it'll be your turn. Things never calmed down. His company grew. Their apartment became larger. His suits became more expensive. His name began appearing in business magazines. And somehow Maya became smaller inside every photograph. She was the woman standing beside him at galas. The wife pouring champagne when contracts closed. The quiet voice he consulted before important meetings and forgot to mention afterward. At first, she hadn't minded. They were married. His victories felt like theirs. Until Daniel stopped saying, we. Maya opened another box. At the bottom lay an old photograph from the company's first office Christmas party. Daniel stood in the center, surrounded by employees. Maya was near the edge. Half her body had been cropped from the frame. She stared at it for several seconds. Then turned it face down. Her phone vibrated. A banking notification. The remaining balance made her stomach tighten. For years, Maya had helped Daniel understand margins, clients, people, timing. Yet she had never negotiated for herself. That realization hurt more than his lawyers had. She reached for the black notebook she had carried from the divorce room. Its pages were crowded with handwriting. Pricing models. Customer retention ideas. Operational mistakes she had noticed in businesses they visited. Half-built concepts Daniel had once dismissed with a distracted, maybe someday. Maya ran her thumb over the ink. The city outside had gone quiet. No husband calling from another room. No presentation waiting to be rescued. No emergency more important than her own life. For the first time in years, the silence belonged entirely to her. Maya opened to a blank page. At the top, she wrote one question. What would I build if I stopped building for someone else? She stared at the words. Then slowly picked up her pen. $43.18. That was what remained of Maya Bennett's old life. She discovered the number beneath the fluorescent lights of a grocery store on a freezing Tuesday evening, while a cashier waited and the woman behind her tapped impatiently at her phone. Maya stared at the card reader. Declined. Could you try it again? She asked softly. The cashier did. Same red message. Maya opened her banking app. $43.18. Her eyes moved across the groceries: eggs, bread, coffee, vegetables, detergent, chicken. Nothing extravagant. Still too much. She removed the coffee first. Then the chicken. The total dropped. Try now. Approved. Maya carried 2 thin plastic bags home through the cold, passing restaurants glowing amber behind fogged windows. Couples leaned across tables. Glasses touched. Somewhere, someone laughed. She kept walking. At the studio, she placed the groceries on the counter and opened her black notebook. The question from 3 nights earlier waited on the page. What would I build if I stopped building for someone else? Maya had written 17 answers beneath it. None paid rent. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She nearly ignored it. Hello? Maya Bennett? Yes. This is Harold Green. We met at Daniel's launch dinner 2 years ago. She remembered him immediately. Harold owned 3 neighborhood cafes. Daniel had barely spoken to him that evening. Maya had. You told me my problem wasn't sales, Harold continued. You said I was losing money between inventory and scheduling. Maya sat straighter. I remember. You were right. A pause. I hired 2 consultants. They gave me 80-page reports and invoices I hated. I need someone who understands what's actually happening. Maya looked around her apartment. The folding table. The mattress. The groceries she could barely afford. I'm not with Whitmore anymore. I know. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. Harold continued. That's why I called you. The room became very still. Not Daniel. Not Mrs. Whitmore. Her. What do you need? The next morning, Maya entered Harold's first cafe at 5:15. She watched deliveries arrive. Counted wasted ingredients. Timed orders. Spoke with employees Daniel would have ignored. For 6 days, she worked from opening until midnight, building spreadsheets at the folding table after returning home. On the 7th morning, Maya placed a 12-page plan in front of Harold. He read it twice. How much? Maya hesitated. Daniel's voice surfaced from somewhere old and unwanted. You never cared about business anyway. She named a fee. Harold studied her. For one terrifying second, Maya thought she had asked for too much. Send me an invoice. That was all. Outside the cafe, morning sunlight spilled between the buildings. Maya stood on the sidewalk while commuters moved around her. Her phone vibrated. Payment received. $2,500. She stared at the number. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't enough to erase what had happened. But Daniel had not introduced her. No husband had opened a door. No settlement had rescued her. Someone had paid Maya Bennett because her mind had value. That night, she bought coffee again. She returned to the folding table, opened the black notebook, and turned to a clean page. At the top, she wrote, Bennett Consulting. Underneath it, she added, Client 1, Harold Green. Maya looked at those words for a long time. Then her laptop chimed. A new email. Harold had referred her to another business owner. Maya smiled. Small. Almost cautious. Then she opened the message. Success did not arrive with applause. It arrived disguised as another morning Maya almost quit. 6 months after Harold Green became Client 1, she sat alone at her folding table at 2:13 a.m., staring at an unpaid invoice large enough to cover 2 months of rent. The client had stopped answering. Her electricity bill was due Friday. 3 proposals had been rejected that week. Maya closed her eyes. For a dangerous moment, Daniel's voice returned. You were never interested in business anyway. She opened her eyes. Then sent another proposal. That became her rhythm. Not revenge. Work. Mornings began before sunrise, with cheap coffee cooling beside spreadsheets. Afternoons disappeared inside warehouses, restaurants, offices, and struggling family businesses. Nights ended with Maya asleep beside her laptop, the black notebook open beneath one hand. Some clients said no. Some underestimated her before she finished introducing herself. One executive spent an entire meeting answering questions Maya had asked by looking at the older white man sitting beside her. Maya corrected him once. Calmly. By the end of the meeting, he was looking only at her. Client 2 became client 4. 4 became 11. 11 became 17. The folding table disappeared first. Then the studio. 2 years after the divorce, Maya signed a lease for a narrow office above a printing company in Brooklyn. 3 desks. 1 window. A second-hand conference table. She stood alone in the empty room after receiving the keys. No champagne. No photographer. Maya simply placed the black notebook on the conference table and smiled. Her first employee arrived Monday. By year 3, there were 12. By year 4, 38. Maya learned payroll before luxury. She learned that leadership meant being the calmest person in the room when everyone else was afraid. And she learned something Daniel never had. How to hear the word no without treating it like disrespect. That was how she met Ethan Rowe. He arrived on a rainy Thursday wearing a navy coat with no visible logo and carrying his own coffee. Maya knew his name. Everyone in private equity did. Rowe Capital controlled investments worth more than most companies Maya had ever advised. Ethan sat across from her and read the numbers without wasting words. You've built something unusually efficient, he said. I know. His mouth almost curved. He slid an investment proposal across the table. The number would have changed Maya's life 3 years earlier. She read every page. Then closed it. No. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You haven't asked for time. I don't need time to know I won't surrender control of the company I built. Silence stretched between them. Once, Maya might have softened the sentence. She didn't anymore. Ethan leaned back. Then smiled. Good. Maya studied him. Good. I don't invest in founders who are afraid to tell me no. 2 weeks later, he returned with different terms. Minority investment. Maya retained control. The capital allowed her to expand without giving away the things she had spent years recovering. Her own authority. A year later, the brass letters appeared behind reception. Bennett and Rowe Group. Maya stood across the lobby watching workers polish the final letter. Sunlight poured through 20-foot windows. Employees crossed the marble floor carrying tablets and coffee. Someone called, "Morning, Maya." She turned. Morning. No one there knew about the grocery card that had once been declined. No one had seen the folding table. No one had watched her count $43. And somewhere else in Manhattan, Daniel Whitmore still believed the woman he divorced had disappeared from his world. He had no idea her name was about to enter his again. Daniel Whitmore had spent years believing success proved he was always right. Then the numbers stopped agreeing with him. It began quietly. A delayed contract. A client who chose another firm. A quarterly report that missed projections by enough to make Daniel stare at the screen longer than usual. Nothing looked fatal. Not yet. Whitmore Industries still occupied 3 polished floors in Midtown. Daniel still arrived in tailored suits. Assistants still moved quickly when he entered a room. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, the cracks were spreading. Daniel had expanded too fast. 2 acquisitions were bleeding cash. A new division he had personally championed had missed every target for 6 months. Senior executives knew the strategy was failing, but years of watching Daniel punish disagreement had taught them something dangerous. Smile. Agree. Survive. At Tuesday's executive meeting, Daniel stood before a screen glowing red. Why am I seeing this now? No one answered. His CFO, Michael Harris, finally cleared his throat. We raised concerns last quarter. Daniel turned. You suggested caution. You didn't tell me the entire integration was collapsing. Michael held his gaze. We tried. The room went silent. Daniel looked around the table. For the first time, he saw what he had built. Not loyalty. Fear. Years earlier, someone had challenged him without hesitation. Maya. She would sit across their kitchen table, circle the weakest assumption in his plan, and say, "You're solving the wrong problem." Daniel had called her difficult sometimes. Too cautious. Too analytical. Now he would have paid for one honest voice in the room. He pushed the memory away. Fix it. But some problems had grown too large for commands. 3 weeks later, Whitmore Industries lost its largest distribution agreement. The bank requested an emergency review. Then came the meeting Daniel could not intimidate his way through. A senior lender closed a folder and folded his hands. We need evidence of independent restructuring before we extend additional credit. Daniel's jaw tightened. You're questioning whether this company is viable? I'm questioning whether your current strategy is. The sentence landed harder than Daniel expected. Outside the conference room, Manhattan glittered beneath a winter sky. 5 years earlier, Daniel had believed owning a view like this meant he had won. Now he barely noticed it. That evening, Michael entered his office carrying a shortlist. We found 3 restructuring firms. Daniel loosened his tie. Who's best? Right now. Michael placed the folder on his desk. Bennett and Rowe Group. Daniel glanced at the name. Something about the first word brushed against an old memory, but exhaustion buried it before it formed. Rowe, he said. As in Ethan Rowe. His investment group has a stake. Daniel leaned back. That was enough. Ethan Rowe was the kind of name that opened doors before anyone touched the handle. Quiet money. Serious money. If Rowe is involved, get the meeting. Michael hesitated. They're selective. Daniel almost smiled. So are we. Michael said nothing. Daniel opened the company profile. Revenue growth. Major turnarounds. An extraordinary client retention rate. He skimmed quickly, looking for Ethan's name. He never reached the leadership page. Never saw the founder's photograph. Never noticed the small line beneath the logo. Founded by Maya Bennett. He closed the folder. Tell them I'll come personally. Across the city the next morning, an executive assistant at Bennett and Rowe opened a scheduling request from Whitmore Industries. She checked the CEO's calendar. Then typed Daniel Whitmore's name into an appointment slot. 5 years after leaving Maya with a cardboard box and nothing else, Daniel had finally found someone he believed could save his company. He simply didn't know it was her. Some names belong to the past. Until one morning, they appear on your calendar. Maya arrived at Bennett and Rowe before 8, carrying coffee in one hand and her tablet in the other. Morning light stretched across the marble lobby. Beyond the glass walls, Manhattan was waking beneath a pale winter sky. "Morning, Maya," the receptionist called. "Morning, Claire." Nothing about the day felt unusual. That lasted 11 minutes. Her executive assistant, Lauren, entered Maya's office carrying a charcoal folder. "Your 10:30 restructuring consultation." She placed it beside Maya's coffee. Maya continued reading an email. "Anything unusual?" "Potentially. They're under pressure from lenders. They need an independent restructuring partner before the bank reviews their credit extension." Maya reached for the folder. Then she saw the name. Whitmore Industries. Her hand stopped. Not dramatically. Just long enough for Lauren to notice. Below the company name was the attending executive. Daniel Whitmore. For several seconds, the office seemed to lose its sound. The muted traffic below. The ventilation. Footsteps beyond the glass. Everything faded beneath a voice Maya had not heard in 5 years. "You came into this marriage with nothing. You can leave the same way." The memory arrived with impossible clarity. Walnut table. Silver rain. A cardboard box beside her chair. Daniel's watch flashing beneath recessed lights as she signed away the final pieces of their marriage. Maya lowered her eyes to her hands. They were steady. That surprised her. Once, seeing his name on a screen could change the temperature of an entire room. Now it was black ink on a client file. Lauren waited. "You know him?" Maya opened the folder. Financial statements. Debt exposure. Failed acquisitions. Declining margins. She turned another page. Yes. Lauren understood from the silence that there was more. "Would you like me to move the meeting to Ethan?" Maya looked toward the windows. 5 years ago, she had walked out carrying everything Daniel believed was worthless. A notebook. A few belongings. Her own name. She remembered the studio apartment. The declined grocery card. Harold Green's first payment. The folding desk. The office above the printing company. 38 employees becoming 80. 80 becoming more. None of those mornings had been about Daniel. That mattered now. Maya closed the folder. "No." Lauren paused. "I can reschedule it." "No." Maya lifted her coffee and took a quiet sip. "Keep the appointment." Lauren nodded and left. The door clicked shut. Maya remained still for another moment. Then she reopened Whitmore Industries' file. Not as an ex-wife. As a CEO. She circled 3 numbers. Underlined an acquisition. Wrote one question beside Daniel's debt structure. By 9:30, she was reviewing his company with the same precision she gave every company that entered her building. At 10:15, Lauren returned. "They're downstairs." Maya glanced at the clock. Something inside her should have tightened. It didn't. She stood, buttoned her cream blazer, and slipped the black notebook into the drawer beside her desk. The same notebook Daniel had once dismissed without a second glance. Then she walked toward the glass doors. Downstairs, Daniel stepped through the entrance of Bennett and Rowe Group and looked up at the brass lettering across the lobby wall. He adjusted his cuff and turned to Michael. "Rowe will understand the numbers." Neither man noticed the framed magazine cover 20 feet away. Maya Bennett stood on it beneath 4 words. The woman rebuilding companies. The elevator chimed upstairs. Maya stepped inside. For 5 years, Daniel had lived without knowing what became of the woman he left with nothing. In a few seconds, the doors would open. And he would find out. There are moments when the past returns expecting to find you exactly where it left you. Daniel Whitmore was about to discover that Maya had moved far beyond that place. The elevator descended toward the lobby. Maya stood alone beneath the soft ceiling lights, watching the numbers fall. 21. 20. 19. Her reflection stared back from the brushed steel doors. Cream blazer. Dark trousers. Small gold earrings. Nothing dramatic. Nothing chosen for him. That realization almost made her smile. 5 years earlier, she had wondered what she would wear if Daniel ever saw her again. Now she had forgotten to wonder. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. Across the lobby, Daniel stood beside Michael Harris beneath the brass letters of Bennett and Rowe Group. For 1 second, Maya simply looked at him. He had changed. A little gray touched his temples. The confidence was still there, but it sat differently now, less like certainty, more like something carefully maintained. Daniel turned. Their eyes met. He stopped speaking. Michael followed his gaze. Maya walked toward them. Her heels made quiet, measured sounds against the marble. Employees passed her. Morning, Maya. Good morning. A junior analyst stepped aside to let her through. Daniel watched every small exchange. Maya. His voice carried disbelief rather than warmth. She stopped several feet away. Good morning, Daniel. His eyes moved over her face, then toward the elevators. What are you doing here? Maya held his gaze. I work here. Something relaxed in Daniel's expression. It happened so quickly another person might have missed it. Maya didn't. Of course. A job. That explanation fit comfortably inside the version of her he still remembered. Daniel recovered his smile. I had no idea. I know. Michael glanced between them. You two know each other? Daniel answered first. We were married. Were. The word hung briefly beneath the high glass ceiling. Michael's expression changed. Maya's did not. Daniel slipped one hand into his pocket. Well. This is unexpected. Behind him, the framed magazine cover caught the morning light. Maya's photograph. Her name. Daniel still hadn't turned around. We're meeting Ethan Rowe, he continued. 10:30. Maya nodded. I'm aware. Are you on his team? There it was. 5 years disappeared for half a second. Not because the question hurt. Because it was so familiar. Daniel still needed the most important person in the room to be someone else. Maya could have corrected him. Instead, she smiled. Come upstairs. The executive elevator opened immediately when she touched her access card. Daniel noticed that. Inside, Maya pressed 27. Michael looked at the private access panel. Executive floor. Yes. Daniel studied her now. More carefully. The doors opened onto quiet glass offices overlooking Manhattan. People greeted Maya by name. One director approached holding a tablet. The Chicago acquisition needs your approval. Give me 20 minutes. Of course. Daniel's smile faded slightly. They continued down the corridor. At the end stood a boardroom framed in smoked glass. Maya opened the door. Please. Daniel entered. A long walnut table stretched toward the windows. Michael took a seat. Daniel remained standing. His eyes landed on the chair at the head of the table. Then on Maya. You've done well. The word sounded almost generous. Almost. Maya placed the Whitmore Industries folder on the table. I've been fortunate. Daniel smiled faintly. You always were smart. 5 years ago, he had told her business was never really her world. Maya remembered. She simply sat down. Not at the side. At the head. Daniel's eyes followed her. Before he could speak, the boardroom door opened behind him. Ethan Rowe walked in. Daniel immediately stood and extended his hand. Mr. Rowe. Daniel Whitmore. Ethan shook it. Then walked past the empty chair Daniel had expected him to take. He stopped beside Maya. And smiled. Sorry to keep you waiting, Maya. Sometimes humiliation does not return as revenge. Sometimes it returns as a chair no one expected you to occupy. Ethan Rowe rested one hand on the back of Maya's chair. Daniel remained standing. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Ethan looked toward him. Daniel, I understand you've already met our founder. The word landed quietly. Founder. Daniel's eyes shifted to Maya. I'm sorry. Ethan pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. Maya founded Bennett Consulting before I invested. Bennett and Rowe came later. Michael Harris lowered his eyes toward the documents in front of him. Daniel did not move. His gaze traveled from Ethan to Maya, then toward the brass nameplate positioned discreetly near the center of the table. Maya Bennett. Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Something disappeared from Daniel's face. Not confidence exactly. Certainty. You own this company. Maya opened the Whitmore Industries folder. I own the controlling interest. No smile. No satisfaction in her voice. Just fact. Daniel slowly sat down. 5 years earlier, he had watched her sign papers that left her without property, investments, or equity. Now he sat inside something she had built from none of them. Ethan folded his hands. Shall we begin? The presentation started. Michael explained the debt. Daniel described the failed acquisitions as temporary integration problems. Maya listened. She interrupted only twice. Both times with questions Daniel could not answer immediately. What percentage of your operating cash is supporting the 2 acquired divisions? Daniel glanced at Michael. 28, Michael said. Maya turned one page. 34.6 after debt servicing. Silence. She already knew his company better than he expected. Daniel adjusted his cuff. Maya and I know each other very well, he said, offering Ethan a thin smile. She's always been careful with numbers. Maya looked up. Always. A strange word from a man who once told her business had never really been her world. Ethan didn't smile. That's one reason this company exists. Daniel's expression tightened. The presentation continued. Then came the request. Whitmore Industries needed Bennett and Rowe to sign onto a restructuring plan before Friday. Without an independent partner, the lender could freeze additional credit. Daniel leaned forward. With Rowe's backing, the bank will have the confidence it needs. Ethan looked at him. My backing? Yes. Ethan glanced toward Maya. You misunderstand our structure. Daniel became still. I'm a minority investor. Ethan tapped the folder once. I don't approve restructuring engagements. Daniel's eyes moved slowly toward Maya. Ethan continued. She does. That was the second revelation. And this one hurt differently. Daniel had not walked into Maya's company merely asking for advice. He had come asking permission. Maya turned to the final page. At the bottom waited an empty signature line. Maya Bennett. The symmetry was almost cruel. 5 years ago, Daniel had placed papers before her and waited for her signature to end their marriage. Now his company's future sat beneath her hand. Daniel stared at the page. Maya. For the first time that morning, her name sounded different in his mouth. Not dismissive. Not familiar. Careful. Maya placed her pen beside the document. She did not pick it up. We have serious concerns. Daniel leaned forward. We can address them. I'm sure you'll try. His jaw tightened. Is this personal? The room went silent. Maya looked at him. There were 1,000 answers she could have given. Instead, she closed the folder. No. Daniel searched her face. That answer unsettled him more than anger would have. Maya slid the unsigned agreement back across the table. This decision will be based on whether your company deserves to survive. And for the first time, Daniel understood. She wasn't holding his past in her hands. She was holding his future.